returns as early as this, as clear as this, as successful as this, and in the volume that it has been. Ladies and gentlemen, Mars.
We sent Spirit to Gusev Crater, a crater in the southern highlands of Mars. It's 100 miles in diameter. What makes it special is that emptying into it is a giant water-carved channel. So Gusev is a hole in the ground with a dry river flowing into it. There has to have been a lake in this crater once upon a time. We sent Spirit there to seek out sediments, to look for sedimentary rocks that were laid down long ago in that lake. Once we landed, I think the scariest part of the whole mission was the initial unfolding of the rover. There are so many gears and springs and motors and hinges and latches that have to work just right, or you're done. Once everything's deployed, we're ready to start looking around. We can look off into the distance with our cameras and with our infrared spectrometer, and we can learn a lot from a distance of 50 yards, 100 yards, about what the rocks look like and what they're made of. Then, if we see a rock that has a texture or a composition that looks interesting to us, we can drive over to it and check it out in detail. For driving, the rover has these kind of googly-eyed cameras that it uses to take images of the terrain in front of it. They've got wide-angle lenses, and they provide sort of a fisheye view. Spirit uses these pictures to make its own decisions about how to drive. It'll drive forward and then take a look at a rock and say, that's too big, I have to go around that. Or maybe it'll see smooth sailing and just move on. And we can actually program different levels of courage or cowardice into the rover, telling it how aggressive it should be, depending on how dangerous we think the terrain is. These rovers are so complicated that it takes hours to get a set of commands right. So when we operate them, we'll normally send commands to them just once a day. The first rock that we looked at was this one. We named it Adirondack. When a rock sits on the surface of a planet, it can undergo what's called weathering. When it's exposed to sunlight or humidity or wind, the surface of the rock can be modified and the evidence of how it formed can be destroyed. So to get to the clues you need, you have to get inside the rock, below the weathered surface. The key to understanding Adirondack was the rock abrasion tool. The rat gives us the ability to grind into a rock, exposing the unaltered evidence inside. So we put a rat hole into Adirondack and then we hit it with everything we had. We looked at it with our cameras, we looked at it with our spectrometers, we looked at it with our microscope. Adirondack is a piece of lava. It's not a sedimentary rock, and every other rock around it is a piece of lava too. This was a huge disappointment. We came to Gusev Crater looking for sediments that were laid down long ago in a lake, but what we found was lava, volcanic rock. The sedimentary rock must be there, but it's been buried under the lava, and we couldn't get to it. When we realized that we hadn't landed on the stuff we came for, we decided we had to go someplace else. 1.5 miles away, there's this spectacular range of hills called the Columbia Hills. You gotta remember, this Spirit was designed to go only 600 yards over its lifetime. So we set out for those hills not knowing if we'd ever make it. Meanwhile, on the other side of Mars, Opportunity was about to land. Opportunity landed at Eagle Crater. It was a 300 million mile interplanetary hole-in-one. We rolled to a stop right in front of layered bedrock. Bedrock is geologic truth. Opportunity landed in front of a Martian history book. When we drove off the lander and looked at the soil in front of us, we saw that it was littered with what looked like little round beads. An uncountable number of little round things. We took out our microscope, we reached out and looked at the soil in detail, and the picture that came down was astounding. They were perfect spheres. I will remember for the rest of my life how I felt when I saw that first picture. When we got to the outcrop and looked at it up close, we realized that the spheres are embedded in the rock, like blueberries in a muffin. The rock erodes away and the blueberries fall out and roll down into the soil. The blueberries, it turns out, are made of hematite, a mineral that on Earth is often formed in liquid water. Next we found jarosite, which is a mineral that couldn't have formed unless there had been water in the rocks. So there was water underground here. Our most extraordinary discovery came when we found ripples in the rocks. Ancient ripples that formed when water flowed over sand on Mars billions of years ago. So there wasn't just water underground here. There was water at the surface. Opportunity discovered that at this place billions of years ago, Mars was most likely a habitable world. It was a place that for some interval of time was suitable for some forms of life. Decades of work paid off with this discovery. Billions of years ago, there were shallow, occasional pools of water. Don't think an ocean, think of salt flats. And the water may not have been a pretty blue. In fact, it may have been so acid it dissolved iron out of the rocks and made wine-red pools under a pink Martian sky. All the discoveries that Opportunity made about water happened in the first 6 weeks of the mission. Everything went right for that rover. I call Opportunity Little Miss Perfect. Opportunity lands in this place where the evidence is right there. The driving is like a parking lot. Everything is perfect. Spirit, our kind of tough, hard-working blue-collar rover, lands in this awful, rocky, rugged place on a lava plain, 1.5 miles from the nearest interesting rocks, and has to struggle for 5 months just to begin her mission. Spirit had to work for everything. Literally had to climb a mountain on Mars. We use the power that comes from the sun to operate the vehicle and to charge the batteries, so the solar arrays are essential. On the way to the Columbia Hills, Spirit's solar arrays were getting coated with dust. We were getting to the point where Spirit was simply going to die. Then, one wonderful day, we climbed up onto the crest of a ridge where we were hit by not one, but several gusts of wind that just cleaned the solar arrays off. It was like having a brand new rover. Spirit got high up in the Columbia Hills and started to find stuff that was different from anything we'd seen. There were salt deposits in the hills, and there were rocks that clearly had been altered by water. It took months of work and struggle, but Spirit finally showed us there had been water on both sides of the planet. She gave us exactly what we needed.